Since the return to democracy in 1999, Nigerian elections have tested the durability of the country's democracy and its democratization process. The 2023 general election was a turning point due to the deployment of new electoral technologies like the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, INEC election results viewing portal, IREV, and a huge rise in young political engagement. As the 2027 general election gets closer, with the political situation evolving rapidly, concerns are mounting about declining voter turnout, particularly in light of the historically low participation recorded in recent elections. Joining us later on this show to discuss who will vote in 2027, a report by Yaga Africa is Victoria Etamesi, Director of Voter Education for the Independent National Electoral Commission.
Also, we shall be engaging Dr. Alaye Tari Theophilus, President, Ijaw Youth Council Worldwide. We will be discussing the political situation in Rivers State as the battle between the Rivers State Assembly and Governor Fubara drags on.
We'll catch up on news-making headlines across the globe. Adefemi Akinsanya brings us updates on the foreign scene and on World Brief. We also review today's newspaper headlines across the globe. We bring you updates on the World Economic Forum annual meeting in 2026 in Davos, while Vimbai Muchirekpen will fill us in on what's trending around the world, highlighting impactful stories on our milestones and our good news report. It's going to be all that and a whole lot more today on The Morning Show.
It's still the morning show here on Arise News, and now we take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. First off, we go to Rivers State, where Chief Judge Justice Simeon Amadi says he cannot, at the moment, act on the resolution of the State House of Assembly requesting him to constitute a panel to investigate the allegations of misconduct against the State Governor Sim Fubara and the Deputy Governor Ngozi Odu. Justice Amadi, in a letter to the Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, acknowledged receiving the House's resolution to set up a 7-man impeachment panel against the governor. He, however, said he's restrained by a subsisting High Court order from taking any action. Justice Amadi recalled the interim court order from a suit by Governor Fubara and Professor Odu challenging the impeachment process over alleged improper service of the notice. In that order, Justice Fuberisima temporarily restrained the Speaker and 27 other defendants from sending any request, resolution, articles of impeachment or other document or communication to the Chief Judge. In addition, the Chief Judge pointed out that the Speaker has lodged an appeal against the interim order at the Court of Appeal. He says he's therefore legally disabled at this point to exercise his duties under the Constitution to act on the request from the House of Assembly. Moving on, the United States-Nigeria Joint Working Group has been formally inaugurated, cementing security and intelligence collaboration between the two countries. U.S. Undersecretary for Political Affairs Alison Hooker asked the Nigerian government to ensure stronger and sustained actions to protect Christians and other vulnerable communities from religious extremists and other terrorists. This is amid the recent abduction of Christian worshippers in Kaduna State. Arise Chief Correspondent Ferdinand Doroha reports.
At the inauguration are representatives of the United States government, members of Nigeria's executives, security chiefs from Nigeria and AFRICOM, among other critical partners. It is the third high-level engagement between the Nigerian government and its U.S. counterpart since the administration of Donald Trump designated Nigeria a country of particular concern. Head of the U.S. delegation and Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Alison Hooker, says tremendous strides have been recorded since the partnership was established in November. She's also asking the Nigerian government to do more to protect Christians and their rights to practice their faith freely and safely.
Advancing religious freedom and security will help the United States and Nigeria to enhance the reciprocal benefits of our relationship, solidifying trade and economic deals, degrading terrorist groups that threaten our interests, and strengthening health responses, among many other areas.
Host of the meeting and Nigeria's National Security Advisor says the partnership has improved early warning and rapid response mechanisms.
Our counter-terrorism postures and situational awareness across multiple theaters of operation have seen improvements, particularly in the Northeast, under Operation Hadinkai, as well as in the Northwest and Central Nigeria under Operation Fasang Yamma. These engagements have moved decisively beyond dialogue to action. They have supported improved target identification and operational fidelity, strengthened joint planning, and enable more effective disruption of terrorist networks and transnational criminal elements. These efforts have resulted in the neutralization of several hundreds of terrorists like never before.
The U.S. government, through the working group, will support Nigeria in combating terrorism, especially in vulnerable and high-risk areas, while also increasing U.S. investment opportunities in the country. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Well, for the first time in almost 3 years, Nigeria now has ambassadors in some key global capitals, as President Bola Tinubu has approved the posting of ambassadors designate, the first from a batch of 68 confirmed by the Senate last December. They are Ambassador Ayodele Oke, Ambassador designate to France, Colonel Latif Are, Ambassador designate to the United States of America, and Ambassador Amin Dalatu, former ambassador to South Korea, as the High Commissioner designate to the United Kingdom. However, the presidency has since issued a clarification regarding the fourth posting earlier announced. In a note to editors, the State House said there was a naming mix-up concerning the ambassador designate to Turkey, adding that the posting is now under review. According to Bayo Onuga, Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been directed to notify the governments of the three countries in line with established diplomatic procedures. Well, congratulations are in order, but most importantly, a lot of work ahead of them. These are key strategic diplomatic relationships that must be managed, with experience and competence. And now we've seen ambassadors designate assigned to these stations. But beyond that, Rufai, this morning, we're looking at other stories around, the joint working group with the United States, Nigeria and the United States, and of course, what's happening in River State with regards to the impeachment process of the governor.
Let me start with the ambassadors. These ambassadors are coming at a time the world is changing, and there will be specific challenges for them. For instance, the ambassador that will be going into the United States. You have a leader, President Trump, that is upending the world order, that is calling the Western Hemisphere our hemisphere. How are you going to interact? Let's not also forget the Sokoto bombing, the killing of people in the country, talk about Christian genocide. How are you going to engage in all of those issues? These are some issues on the front burner. How are you going to manage Trump when he throws his temper tantrums against Nigeria and the African continent? What will be Nigeria's voice and position on most of these issues? This ambassador is going in at a time where the multilateral institutions are failing. Trump is upending the multilateral institution. He's got a board of peace yesterday. That's going to do the replica of what the United Nations is doing. So is it that America wants to upend the United Nations again, just like they did to the League of Nations? These are many questions. Climate change, opportunity for the African continent. These are questions. Also, the fact that he's going there at a time where you have far-reaching consequences of the actions of right-wing nationalism and the likes. The ambassador to the UK too will face those challenges. How are you going to interact with the Farage? He's doing well on the polls, over 20-something%. If elections are done today, a Farage might emerge. Right-wing sentiments in the UK. The UK is shifting. What's going to be their policy? Nations are becoming more insular. How are you going to have a conversation? Even France, the ambassador that is going there should also watch. After Macron, the right-wing movement stands a big chance of coming in. You can see the great length Marine Le Pen's party is making in the country. So if you have a very insular France, a very insular UK, how are you going to interact with them? So I don't envy them because it's not a great time to be an ambassador. It's not the time of an entité cordiale. It is a time of real strategic thinking. And that's why President Tinubu, these are people he can trust, because you've got to be able to trust these people one way or the other. And speaking of the Americans, and that's why the Americans are also telling us that we must do more as regards protecting Christians. Why did this come to light? The case of the 177 people that are kidnapped in Kaduna. For me, I think we are losing our country. Do you know why?
Why?
By today, the local government chairman that made a role in the first denial of the case, by today, people should be asking him questions. For good measure, I do not see why he can't be invited by the authorities to be able to ask questions. What do they know? Because, see, if the response time was agreed upon and work was done, they will have mitigated the effect. They probably will have gone into the bush and got these people back. So the idea and the attempt to kill the story in its own is criminal and treasonable. If these people, many days after, didn't bring out this list, they were going to kill the story. I mean, and I've spoken to people on ground. I've got messages from people on ground. This was the attempt. And that's why Ini, a member of the PDP, was right to ask those questions. The local government chairman, the people involved, because there was an account where they said that when the thing had happened, they had seen even him coming out with some military officials around that area, where the people have been long pushed into the bush. What do they know about the activities of these people? And that's why we've always said, see, bandits, you can never make a deal with them, because any deal with them, they will never honor it. That's why they are criminals, they are bandits. You don't trust the bandits. If you trust the bandits, it shows tomfoolery on your part. So we need to be able to ask them questions. And the entire architecture that first did the denial, I know the police have come to write a sweet letter to tell us, oh, it was not like that. No, it should not be the case. It should not be the case. As regards Rivers, please, I must have to call. We have now seen the chief judge say, you have a lot of contending cases. Appeal here, this and all of that. For the sake of constitutionality, I cannot put my hands into it. Let us respect the wishes of this chief judge. Because more stories are coming out. Right. I think the Tribune was reporting yesterday that there was actually a confirmation to Darlington Orji's story that 350 million was collected. They said the lawmaker said it was actually 1 billion they were supposed to collect, but 350 was collected. So we are getting more clarity. But the chief judge said, I don't want to put my hands in this. Let's see how all of this pans out.
Let's see. All right, Dr. Mati.
Okay. The chief judge of Rivers State, Justice Amadi, Simeon Amadi, Justice Chibuzo Simeon Amadi, I think he has acted wisely. He has demonstrated resilience. He has acted in fidelity with established precedents in law. There was once in one state where, and I think he quoted the case in his response to the Speaker of the House of Assembly, when the chief judge defied an interim injunction and went ahead to constitute a panel in line with Section 188 sub 5 governing the impeachment process. And that, particular chief judge was tongue-lashed. So in this case, what the chief judge of Rivers State has done is in order. And we just need to study his letter to Honorable Martin Amewule, the Speaker of the House of Assembly. He says, my hands are fettered. In other words, my hands are tied. One, he has an obligation to respect the interim injunction, which is a preservatory order. I saw 1 or 2 newspapers say he has stopped the impeachment process. No, that's not the expression. It's a temporary order. It's a preservatory order. And it's also a constitutional preservation that both parties in the High Court case, namely the governor and his deputy, are entitled to. And the chief judge was listed as a defendant in both cases. So he cannot now be a judge in his own case. Number 2 is that he also says he has received a notice of, summon in the case in which the Speaker of the House of Assembly himself has filed in the Court of Appeal, Port Harcourt Division. So on those two grounds, it cannot move forward. It cannot activate the spirit of Section 188 sub 5, which will require him to set up a panel of persons, 7 persons of unquestionable integrity. I also say that, look, it was also similarly a smart move on the part of the governor and the deputy governor, because what this means is that until the motion of notice is determined, then nobody can move forward. So they will be in the High Court. The High Court of Justice Fiberesima is going to, treat the case today because he adjourned the matter to January 23, which is today. There is now another pending suit in the Court of Appeal, Port Harcourt Division. This is how they will be dragging back and forth. They could even take the matter all the way to the Supreme Court. And to the extent that the will of justice in Nigeria grants slowly, they will be on this matter until the primaries will come. Fubara will run away with the nomination. We will get to the election. So they are going to cancel each other out. And this is just, how politics goes, where the intersection is between the legislative process and the judicial process. So nobody should blame Justice Simeon Amadi. He's just done what I think is the wisest thing to do in the circumstances. As for the ambassadors, now 3 of them out of 68 who are ambassador designates have now been assigned, missions. Ambassador Ayoke goes to France. Ambassador Ayoke speaks French. So he will be well at home there. Colonel Are is going to the United States. Yeah, he's been within the security space and all of that. The Americans being so concerned about the security situation in Nigeria, he will be able to answer all the right questions because of his background in military intelligence. Now, Ambassador Dalhatu is going to the court of St. James, that is, the UK. So these are the 3 that have been posted. And I guess out of the urgency of the matter, but let's just make a number of points. The first is that the government acted too late in posting these ambassadors. It's not something you leave till the last minute. Why? Because the process of securing the agreement is not automatic. You have to send these names to the receiving host, and then the receiving host will have to get back to you. It's not something you can dictate the pace as the sending country. So maybe for the next 7 months, these 3 ambassadors who have now been given missions may not go there. In fact, the other ones, the remaining 65, may not go anywhere even until election time, making mockery of the entire process. And that's what happens when you delay something you should do expeditiously. Second, I have made a point here that the president of Nigeria, post-haste, immediately, has to constitute what is called the Presidential Council on Foreign Relations. That Presidential Council on Foreign Relations, I think they abandoned it during Buhari's time. And these are experienced, highly experienced, seasoned, cultured diplomats, experienced, who have been everywhere. Nigeria had trained them. The international community had trained them to advise the government. I don't know how many people they still have in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who even knows what the policy of Nigeria is in terms of foreign policy process, in terms of setting priorities. Those people bring institutional memory to the table. That should be constituted. I have also argued on this table that you also need back-channel routes made up of distinguished Nigerians who have serious inroads into the American system, who can serve their country behind the limelight. People like Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, people like Dr. Bayo Ogunlesi, people like Mustafa Chike-Obi, and business people like Tony Elumelu, Abdusamad Rabiu, Aliko Dangote. All these people, they can be part of our foreign policy process. But here we act as if we're in the 18th century of diplomacy, not knowing that, look, you can also use other people to do all of this. I hope the administration will wake up in that regard. Finally, I think the issue about Alison Hooker who met with the Nigerian authorities is simply that she made the point that Nigeria can do a lot more to protect Christians. And this is coming on the back of the abduction of 177 persons from Ekwa Church and Cherubim and Seraphim Church in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. Now, 167 persons are still in custody. But it's important that the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs is emphasizing the partnership between Nigeria and the United States in solving these problems. And also, our own National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, has identified, explained, outlined all the efforts that the Tinubu administration is making to ensure that this environment is secure, safe for all. But, you know, people like Alice Nwuka, there's too much focus on Christians. But I'm saying that we are all victims. All of us deserve to be safe. After all, yesterday there was panic in Lagos State, in Ikeja area, when they said, students were going to be abducted. And yesterday also, President Trump, on the sidelines of Davos, while signing the Board of Peace, document, was saying, look, we are doing very well in Nigeria. We have helped to decimate people who are killing Christians. It's not only Christians, so all of us want safety. In fact, the thing has come to Ikeja. I don't want it to come to Ikoyi.
No, they've debunked it. Nothing came to Ikeja. They've dismissed it.
Okay, the police said they moved in. They said they moved in and they took charge and they did not see any evidence. That's what they said. Not that they debunked it. They said there was action and
there was nothing,
immediate action.
Nothing like that happened. It was just a scare.
Maybe.
So that people's mind will not go.
Will not go. But the truth is that
there was an activity and many schools closed early around the Ikeja area. Let them not even have a scare in Ikoyi, because I come to Ikoyi every day. I don't want any scare around this environment.
You see what, Dr. Martin, this is part of the Nigerian problem. Until it touches your doorstep, before we begin to say that, no, let it not come near me. Let it not touch any doorstep across Nigeria. But let me just say that.
So you don't want a scare in Ikoyi? What about
I don't want a scare anywhere.
What about people in Sokoto and everywhere?
No scare anywhere. No scare anywhere.
Nobody.
By the time it gets to Ikoyi,
no Nigerian
it's gone everywhere.
In any part of Nigeria deserves to go to bed afraid. Yes, are facing. This is the reality of a lot of people, and unfortunately, that's what happens. Whereby, until it comes to the doorsteps of those who are influential or have opportunities to cause a change, before it is taken very seriously. Rufai, talking about that statement that was debunked yesterday, going back to the Kaduna issue, this is why we took it very seriously. That if there's a trust deficit whereby we see a denial once of an actual event, then you can question a number of denials that then takes place afterwards. And that's why we've continue to call for some form of, sanction or, reprimand for the person or the officer who lied to the Nigerian people. But very quickly, because we're out of time, in the case of the River State, what happened very clearly and simply by the Chief Judge, Justice Simon Amadi, was just a respect for the rule of law and due process, is what he has said. And so I think it's important to not misconstrue or mislead people through headlines or say that, it's now everything is off the table. Yes, technicalities can draw out the case in such a way that it is tantamount to being off the table. But as we speak, what he had just stated was that he was following the rule of law, the matters are in court, and his hands are tied at the moment in respect for the rule of law, and he's taking the right note. But I would just like to re-emphasize what we have often talked about with regards to all the shenanigans that are happening in River State, is that at the end of the day, the people suffer. Can the State House of Assembly, can the governor be allowed to do the work that he was elected to do, representing the interests of the people and actually carrying out, projects, initiatives that would better the lives of people living in River State? That's what the call has been for. A lot of distraction has happened since Governor Simfobara took office, and unfortunately, what has dominated the headlines with regards to River State is not reports of development or reports of what's happening to change the lives of the people who voted for their governor, but political wranglings between, this one party or the other faction or the other party, and that is what has dominated. So hopefully in the course of this, the governance would not be, adversely affected created in such a way that the people cannot speak up for anything that they've gained from this administration. Now, moving on very quickly to the appointment of the ambassadors, already it's been established about the tall task ahead of them if they have the opportunity to actually carry out their duties. But one of the things I must mention is what's playing out on the global scene, especially at Davos as we currently speak, and very shortly we'll be going to Davos to get a report of highlights of yesterday and what to look forward to as they begin to wrap up, is the fact that you would see that consistently where the West has taken charge of the conversation, it seems like Africa and the and the sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, is off the table. In fact, I was reading an article this morning where it was talking about if you're not on the table, you are the menu. And a lot of conversations have happened with almost not a disregard for the continent and a disregard for Nigeria. So one of the things I'd like to see when it comes to our foreign policy, our engagement with these key countries, the United Kingdom, United States, France, is how we bring back Africa to the table, how we bring back Nigeria to the table, how we can once again have a voice on the table so that we are not just, we don't just take on the fallout or the outcome of conversations without having any say at all. Conversations and relationships must be repaired, and these gentlemen who have now had the opportunity to be appointed or sent to these stations have a high task to ensure that they are able to keep that conversation going and that Nigeria has a voice on the global conversation. But we'll definitely be talking about this in more detail and setting an agenda for the ambassadors designate that have already been identified so far, and hopefully for the other now 65, it won't take this long to find out which country they'll be posted to.